What we're going to cover this week is the Pauline Epistles. So we're basically going to take what we talked about last week and we're going to condense it and talk about a small subsection of it. How many Pauline Epistles are there? How many Pauline Epistles are there? Very good. Okay, so, no, it's not 4, it's 13. It's 13. I have 13. I don't know what you have. I keep forgetting I have it. All right, if you look up here, guys, what we're going to take is we're going to take these epistles that are up here. No, it's 13, guys. We're going to take the epistles, We're going to take the epistles that we have up here, or we're going to take what we talked about last week, at least with Mary, and that box there, the letters that St. Paul wrote is what we're going to focus on. 13. Yeah. No, it's 13. I don't know why everybody threw me off. All right, so we're going to take the letters. We're going to take all of the letters that St. Paul wrote, and we're going to talk about them today. So the Pauline epistles are written by St. Paul. That's the easy one, okay? So I know, right? Shocking. So St. Paul wrote the Pauline epistles. There are multiple different epistles, okay? And there are 13 that are attributed specifically to him, and that's what we're going to go through today. Now, these epistles, this is really small, but I'll give Bulis the slides, and then you can look at it later. The way that they're arranged in the Bible is not written necessarily in chronological order. If you ever open up so I have something missing. Well, we'll figure it out. Okay, the order that they're written in, or the order that they're ordered in, is not necessarily the order that St. Paul wrote them in. So what St. Paul did was he ended up taking 4 journeys. Okay, 4 journeys during his lifetime, where he got on a boat. He went to like Spain, Italy, Asia Minor, which is Turkey. And every time he made a stop at somewhere, he would spend time, he would make churches, he would ordain priests, and then he would leave. And every so often he would have different types of issues, okay? And every time he had an issue, he would go back and he would write an epistle. So you guys know the letters that we read by the Pope? So every nativity and resurrection, we read a letter from the Pope, right? Yes? Okay? Now we're high tech. He has a video. Okay, but when we were younger, it was just a letter. It was a letter that was translated into English, and it would be a message about the resurrection. That message, that idea, dates back to the epistles that the apostles wrote. So imagine everybody in church. It's a new church. Everybody's new at this whole Christianity thing, and they're struggling. And these letters were like a letter of hope. Like imagine everybody huddling together because a letter from St. Paul has arrived. So all the people in Galatia or in Rome would huddle together and read this letter that came from St. Paul himself. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the epistles, okay? So I want to start off before we get into there. Who is St. Paul? St. Paul, who is he? Saul. He's Saul of Tarsus. Thank you. He's Saul of Tarsus. What's the story? Did he start off as a good guy or a bad guy? Bad guy. And in fact, he wasn't just a bad guy. He was a self-proclaimed Pharisee and a son of a Pharisee. To the point where St. Paul himself, and actually I have in the next slide, but St. Paul, he studied under this really well-known guy. His name was Gamaliel. We hear about him in Acts. He's this very well-known person who was very educated, and he was very highly respected. And Paul studied under this guy. He was like the disciple of Gamaliel. And not only was he a disciple of this guy, it says, and he says it himself in his epistle, that he's extremely zealous in his studies. What does zealous mean? Somebody here mentioned SATs. Somebody here mentioned SATs. Who's doing SATs? What does zealous mean? Not even close. Not the opposite of jealousy. Yes. Huh? Excited to do something. Very good. I couldn't hear you. Sorry. He talks much louder than you do. Sorry. Excited to. So zealous means you're very excited, you're very eager, you're very anxious to do something. So St. Paul, or when he was Saul, when he was studying and learning, he was kind of a nerd. Okay? He was known as somebody who was extremely zealous in his he knew everything. He knew different languages. He knew different traditions. He knew everything, it says, beyond many of his fellows. So beyond many of his classmates. So pick the smartest one amongst you, it was him. Okay? And not only that, but it was his desire to persecute the church. It was his desire to persecute the church. The first martyr we have in our church is who? Who's the first martyr we have in the church? Saint Stephen. Okay? Saint Paul, when they were murdering Stephen, he was present. You see in the very back here, I don't have access to the mouse. You see in the very back by the tower, there's that little guy in the green, with the green pants. Skirt. In the green skirt, apparently. Okay? That's Saul. Saul was present, and not only that, he was overseeing the murder or the killing of Stephen. That was his role. He was standing all the way at the back, and he was overseeing it, almost as if to say, this was me. This was my domain. So this is the beginning of Saul. I want to give you guys this framework so you understand. The man who stood there and witnessed the first martyr in the church became one of the most prolific writers in the entire Bible. He wrote more books than anybody else did in what makes up our current day Bible. So imagine that. Okay, the man who started it all, and it's very appropriate now. 2 days ago, yesterday, we celebrated the feast of what? I give you credit because you keep trying. You haven't gotten one right yet, but you keep trying. Yesterday, what did we celebrate? The feast of what? Nowruz, not the feast of September 11th, but thank you for giving it a shot. Okay, we celebrated the feast, I almost said it. We celebrated the feast of Nowruz, which is what? What's Nowruz? New Year. And what do we remember? Yesterday's Coptic New Year. Today's Tut too. Yesterday was the first of Tut. We celebrate, guys. We celebrate in our church. Guys. Thank you. I want to get that. We celebrate in our church, guys, martyrs. More than anything else, we celebrate martyrs. And so imagine, the first martyr that we have, Saul was present and was overseeing it. Guys, phone away. He was present and he was overseeing it. Okay? And so it's important to know this. This is not a character bash on Paul. That's not what we're doing today, okay? We're not railing on St. Paul, saying, oh, he was bad. But it's important to know this. I went too far. It's important to know this, guys, because all of this, it shows up in how he wrote. All of this, it shows up in how he wrote. So, the epistles. His epistles fall into two main categories, okay? There's two main categories of his epistles. 9 of them are written to the churches, okay? So 9 of them are written to different churches. So like St. Mark's, St. Mary's, St. Mina's, 9 different ones are written to the churches. But instead of calling it the Epistle of St. Mark's or the Epistle of St. Mary's Church, back then the churches were known by their territories. So you have the Epistle to the Romans, Epistle to the Corinthians, to the Galatians, right? These are the different regions that epistles were written to. The last ones, the last 4, are called pastoral or personal ones. So his epistles, again, they're split into 2. 9 to churches, 4 to personal ones. Yes? How come what? I think I might have missed that one. That's weird. That's what I'm missing. So it is 14. That's weird. Last time I did this, it didn't show. Yeah, and I think that's why I didn't have it in here. 13, and then they have 14. So I have 13. I have Hebrews excluded for today, but I have all the other ones here that we'll go through. So it's a good question, though. So here's how I want to do this, guys. I want to talk about the different epistles in the order that they were written. Okay? I want to talk about the different ones in the order that they were written, but not necessarily in the order you're going to see them in the Bible, okay? Because the order that they're written as well, you're going to see the different issues that the church is facing. And so here's how we're going to do it. We're going to go through each one quickly, and we're just going to do a very simple, like, who, what, when, where for each one. Otherwise, you could be here for, till tomorrow going through all these. Okay? So the first one, Galatians. So who do you think this was written to? The people of Galatia. These will be the easy ones. Anyone know where that is? I didn't know where it was. Still wrong. All right. Probably the Romans one would be the one in Rome. But nice try. Where's Galatia? No. Galatia is by where you have Thank you. Modern day Turkey. So around where the highland area of Turkey is, okay, that's where the Galatians. Now, what was written? What was written to these Galatians? The main thing, that didn't work. Back in Galatia, their plan, what they're saying was, if you wanted to go from a non-believer, so in the Old Testament you had the Jews and the Gentiles. Who were the Gentiles? Who are the Gentiles? He's right. So you had the Jews and you had everybody else. Everybody else fell into Gentiles. They were known as the non-believers. So the people in Galatia, after Christianity started in the church, here was the problem. The people of Galatia said, if you want to be a Christian and you're a Jew, great. If you're a Jewish person, all you have to do is be baptized and you're Christian. But if you were a Gentile, you have to become Jewish first and then you have to become Christian. Huh? You know, it wasn't about intelligent and not intelligent, but rather it was about Jewish pride. So everybody who was Jewish said, you know what? You can't do what in order for you to be Christian, you have to go what we went through. You have to become a Jewish person first. And so basically, they walked around and they said, you have to believe in the law of Moses first. In order to become a Christian, you have to become Jew, you have to believe in the law of Moses, and then you have to become Christian. What's the problem with this thought?
How to become Jewish?
What's the problem with this thought?
That only Jews are allowed to.
Good. And what ends up happening is they believed that everybody has to abide by Jewish traditions, and that was wrong, and that was incorrect. And what St. Paul ended up writing to them about was that ultimately people don't become sanctified because they follow the law of somebody in the Old Testament, okay? It's not some legal work. You know, trying to think what you guys might have gone through. I happen to get married, but when you go and like sign a contract and it's like law, you know when you get older, you're gonna sign contracts for something. I don't know what, but for now you probably don't do this. But you ever see like somebody who signs a contract, like a sports athlete? They sign a contract, they're gonna be on that team for a couple of years, and that's it. Oh, yeah, there you go, right? So you sign a contract of some sort. That's what the people in Galatia felt was Christianity, that you had to sign some contract. And the only way that you could sign that contract is if you're Jewish. And so you had to become Jewish to be allowed to sign a contract. What's wrong with that mentality? Is that how Christianity works? No. It's not some legal thing where I have to sign a document and I'm done, right? That's not how this works. And so ultimately what St. Paul wrote in this epistle to the Galatians is what? Is that you guys, it is not mandatory. Stay with me. I know they're having more fun. All right? Is that ultimately you don't have to become Jewish just to go to Christianity. That's not a necessary step. Does that make sense? Okay. The next one, Thessalonians. Who was this written to? The people of? Thessalonia. Okay, close. Very good. Where's Thessalonia? Anybody know? If you get any of these right, I'm going to be really impressed, other than Romans. Anybody know where Thessalonia was? Not Asia Minor. Nothing's in Africa. No, not Europe. Huh? Yes, very good. It was near modern-day Greece. Were you guessing, or did you know that? Awesome, very good. Listen, guys, the answer is there. You don't have to argue anymore. There's going to be like 11 more. You're fine. Near modern-day Greece, okay? Now, who did he write this to? Or what did he write this for? He basically went and he told all the believers, he was giving them a letter of encouragement. Okay? And he was telling them to continue to grow ahead of the fact that Christ is returning. Actually, every single chapter of 1 Thessalonians ends concludes with the end of the world. Every single chapter. Why do you think he did that?
Because they were bad.
No, not quite. It's a good guess, though. Not to warn them, but it's something else. To remind them. Very good. It's to remind them that this is to come. That don't forget, you know when they say like keep your eye on the prize? Okay? It's the same thing. You know, be Christians, hey, keep your eyes on me. I'm the prize, okay? Keep your eyes on me, all right? So they say the expression, keep your eye on the prize. Why? Keep your eye on the main focus. The main focus of Christianity is not how good of whatever I am. Not to brag or whatever. The main goal is to be ready for, it's to be ready for what? What are you going to be ready for?
Death.
Heaven, death, or
Hell.
the second coming. Nice. Whatever. You got there somewhat. Okay? And so ultimately, guys, he wrote this because he stayed there for a little bit and then he had to leave. And what happened was the people of Thessalonica were suffering a lot of like outside force. So actually there's a lot of freshmen up there. So imagine when you go away to college, ask one of these guys if they're freshmen. Actually it's not that many. If you're a freshman, imagine you're going off to college and like your first month in college. You're by yourself, you're like several hundred miles away from home. How are you going to feel? Homesick, what else? What are you going to feel about everything around you? You're going to feel weird. Jerome's going to feel like they're mean people. What else? You're going to try to make friends. So imagine, stay with me, guys. Imagine the new church was like a kid going off to college. Everything around them is new, but instead of trying to make friends, the people around them were trying to make them do bad things. Well, none of you said that 2 minutes ago, so that's not my problem. Okay? So that's what they do in college. All right, great. So imagine then that's what they do in college. And so what St. Paul was doing was his goal. You're going to get to do this if you graduate. You graduate if you study. You can't pass if you don't listen. Seriously. Unbelievable, guys. Yeah, seriously. All of this is like the toughest one that you're going to get. I know the curriculum. This is tough. All right? So he wrote this to encourage them, much like, I mean, this probably wouldn't help you, but like, imagine like your parents or even like Abuna is writing you a letter 1 month into college. You're upset about school. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to make it. Everybody hates me. They don't like me, right? Whatever it is. And Abuna writes you this amazing, loving letter. That's what this epistle was like. And ultimately, the way he did it was, first thing he did was he praised the new converts and he tried to give them encouragement. And then he gave them some instructions and he gave assurance to the believers who, quote unquote, die with Christ. So that's the goal, guys. This whole thing with the Thessalonians is like thinking like somebody who's new in Christianity and needs comfort, right? Needs peace, needs comfort. All right. 2 Thessalonians. Written, very good. There it is. Veronica's excited about it. It was written to the people in Greece. Thank you. Very good. We got one. You put that one on the test. All right. Is in Greece. Okay. And
If I get it right, I pass.
why do you think he wrote 2 epistles to the same people? Because they needed it. They're ignorant? No, they weren't ignorant. Don't call your forefathers ignorant. What? It's 2 different messages. Okay, so have any of you read 2 Thessalonians? You stopped at 1, you didn't want to do the second? Have any of you read 2 Thessalonians? Yeah, read it right now? Okay. The entire epistle is talking about waiting for the Lord's second coming. Actually, it's interesting. Everybody keeps saying like the end of the world. The end of the world, guys, is in Revelations. That's what everybody keeps saying, right? They talk about the end of the world in the book of Revelations. Stay with me. But to be completely honest with you guys, there are almost as many mentions about Christ's second coming in the book of Thessalonians. Throughout the entire book of Thessalonians, you hear the same phrase repeated over and over. You hear it about a thief in the night. Okay? A thief in the night. Why do they attribute the end of the world or Christ's second coming as a thief in the night? Very good. A thief in the night is unexpected. Okay? A thief in the night, stay with me, guys. A thief in the night is what? He's very unexpected. So throughout all of 2 Thessalonians, you hear this term of a thief in the night. And he's reminding them that this isn't like a test. You have time. Yeah. It's like a pop quiz. Jesus is going to come. There's going to be some signs, like a pop quiz. You know when like you can sense when your teacher's going to give you a pop quiz? Like if I had any say, I'd give you one right now, right? So like you know it's coming, but you don't know when it's coming. That is the second coming in a nutshell. And that is what he's reminding them. So if you look through 2 Thessalonians, the message of Christ coming as a thief in the night is there all the time. And there's another issue. There was a little heresy going around then about how the second coming or the judgment already occurred. Don't ask me why. I'm not going to get into that detail, but you can read it. But basically, people were going around and falsely saying the judgment had already come. So what St. Paul was doing was he was giving them instructions to stand firm. Stand firm against what? The false teachings. And the other thing was that he's warning them against idleness. What's idleness, and why would he tell them to stay away from it? What's idleness? Not I-D-O-L, I-D-L-E. What is idleness, and why would he tell them to stay away from it? Okay, great. Idleness is laziness. Why is he telling them to stay away from laziness? It's a sin. What else? Somebody has said something. Hold on. Somebody who has not yet said anything today. Okay, you just trailed off. When you get lazy, you get bored. No. What was after bored? You were right. Okay. There is an expression that it goes, the idle mind, I-D-L-E, is the devil's playground. Which means when you're bored, the devil runs amok. He runs rampant, and he's gonna have his way with you. You are his park. Very good. That's a good one. I like that one. Okay? If you read 2 Thessalonians, guys, he actually tells them, go get a job. You ever hear like my parents say it to me, go get a job. Get off your whatever and go get a job. Okay? It's the same thing, guys. He's telling them, don't be lazy. Laziness means you're going to be tempted by the devil, by these false teachings, but you will be tempted. Okay? Guaranteed that you will be tempted. All right. The next one. Corinthians, the people of? You got it. The people of? You guys are killing me. Corinth, the people of Corinth. Does anybody care to know? You're going to be upset when I show this to you. Listen, guys, I promise you there's only one Rome, and it's going to show up in a minute, okay? You don't have to guess Rome. You're going to know when it's Rome. You're killing me, okay? It's actually the capital of Greece. The capital of ancient Greece. It is not Rome, okay? It is the capital of ancient Greece. And what he did was he wrote this specific epistle. He wrote this specific epistle, guys, to combat or to go against problems that were going on in the church. You had a question? No, this is, when they say chief city, they're talking about like chief in terms of like trade and things like that, commerce and things that are coming in and out. Kind of like that. So like the capital of New York. So I guess I shouldn't use the word capital. So think of like New York City is like the chief city, but what the capital of New York is technically Albany. But everybody's like, really, Albany? Right? What goes on in there? So chief city is in like the most well-known one at that time. One of the big ones. Okay? So at that time, there were very specific problems. The church itself, so somebody said earlier when I asked why they wrote an epistle, it was because the church had problems. And that was wrong. In this case, the church had problems. The church was actually torn apart by like different groups. And what he did was he wrote this epistle almost like teaching them how to like come back from their weakness. Okay? And what he did was he tried to correct a bunch of the false teachings, and he answered different questions. And finally, guys, what he did was he brought the church like into obedience. Okay? He basically brought the church, like he called them into like an obedience. So, this is like nice and dandy in the year like 50 AD, right? You have a new church, you have false teachings. You don't have this so much right now, right? So, why do we have this in the Bible? What's the point of this today? Not just history. Why do we have this in the Bible?
We have it in the Bible so we don't.
To support us how? Learn, okay, but support us how? Exactly. So think of how many times you might be struggling with something. Think of how many times you're in a group of friends, you might be torn apart. Okay, at the end of the day, we, the body, we're the church, right? So ultimately, we're all going to go through something like this. So the goal of what I'm showing you all this for, guys, honestly, is so that way when you feel something like this, you can go and read this epistle. Each one is like a handful of chapters. Some is as short as one, some is a couple more than that. So the idea, guys, is that St. Paul didn't write this in the year 50 AD and didn't have to worry, and so that way no one has to worry about it again. No. The idea is it's a living book. So when we go through the same things, when we go through the same different things, we can use this to rely on. Huh? To guide. Very good. 2 Corinthians. Corinth was where? Greece. And now, what he wrote this one for is because he was telling them to reject false apostles. So after he left, so St. Paul came to Corinth, he left, and then all of a sudden, yeah, Corinth.
Corinth?
Yeah. Did I say something different?
You said Corinth.
No, Corinth.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. After he left the first time, a group of people came and they were like, yeah, no, that St. Paul guy, we're with him. Yeah. They showed up and they were like, yeah, no, we're with him. And you know what? You don't have to just listen to him. You can listen to all of us. Okay? You don't have to just listen to that guy. He was cool and he kind of knew what he was doing, but we're part of it and we're kind of better than him. We're like his teachers or something. So people basically, he taught the people, but the new people who came in basically came in. Remember, these people are sitting here waiting for him to come back. And so what happens is when you have another group of people who were clever enough or sneaky enough to show up and pretend like they were one of them, what are the people going to do? They're going to believe him. They're going to believe this group. And so what he did is that he wrote this epistle saying, do not chain yourselves. Do not group yourselves with these unbelievers. And what he was doing was he was explaining to them what... Oh yeah, at that time they were. But he was explaining to them what true Christian ministry means. So what does it really mean to be a true Christian ministry? And then finally, he was dealing with some little different opposition to church. So again, think of the church as like a young kid who was going through troubles, and it was the apostles' job to like guide them and mentor them. Guide them and mentor them. All right, Romans. Where is the book of Romans for? Where do the people live? It's in Rome. The fact that only 4 of you said it is killing me. I've been waiting for this since slide 1. Romans is in Roman. Very good. I'm going to be supportive today, okay? And then when we got to it, she still got it wrong. It's okay. He stopped guessing. Kukubuku's done. He's guessed 6 wrong and he's done. Did you? I'm sorry. The one time you got it right and I didn't even hear you. Now I feel bad. Okay, Romans. It was in Rome, okay? Oh, look there. You should really know what this is. Okay, wonderful. Haha, I made a joke I didn't even know. All right, so any of you ever read the book of Romans? Please tell me you read the book of Romans. Yes. Have you ever tried to get through the book of Romans? How was it compared to the other books? Are you just saying anything that comes to your mind? No, seriously. Have you guys ever... Okay, good. They're done. Thank God. All right. So let's... Now I'm the most interesting thing in the room. I know I'm probably not, but I'm trying here. Okay? What... Have you ever... Seriously. It's like... I'm going to be done in like 10 minutes. You've read a lot of books? I hope you'd remember the Bible book. All right, guys, stay with me. Those of you in the back who just walked in, thank you. No, don't look at them. Put your phone away. Shh. Guys, can I have you focus? 10 minutes and I'll be done, I promise. Romans. Have any of you genuinely tried to read the book? What is kind of like, what does it feel like when you read it? How does it compare to the other epistles? Think about it. It's complex. What else is it? Yeah, so guys, if you ever read the Epistle of the Romans, it's actually one of the most challenging epistles ever written. There's a lot of very deep meaning behind it. Very deep meaning behind a lot of the words. And a lot of the words is sometimes it's hard to understand right away at face value versus the other epistles. Yeah. Why? What was the big deal about Rome at the time? Who was in Rome? Now let's guess for real. Who was in Rome? Philosophers. What else? Jerome, you said it. Rome was the what? Rome was the capital of the empire. The rich, the emperor, his army, right? The centurions, right? All the soldiers. Everything came out of Rome. It was the headquarters. And so he wrote the epistle. He wrote the epistle and directed it to those people, and he wrote it for the people who had that level of understanding. And what he basically did, Romans is just a whole synopsis of the gospel. His goal was to go in and give them the whole gospel because he knew that they could handle it. You ever have a class of like an AP class? What do they do in AP classes? They go quickly, they throw everything at you. Why? Because they know you can handle it. And they challenge you. That's the book of Romans. And what he did was, he did it to give them some sort of theological introduction. Okay? And he did it as this giant essay. It was like an essay on all of theology from the very beginning to the very end. Why? He gets one shot with the Romans, right? These people don't know Christianity. In fact, they just know the Jews as this annoying little group of people. That's how they knew the Jews. This annoying little group of people who are getting in their way. And he gets one shot to teach them about the message of Christ. And so if you read in the book of Romans, it's a very different tone. It's a very heavy tone. And there's a verse in one of St. Paul's other epistles. I'm going to read it, and it should be familiar to you. He says, "Though I am free and belong to no one, I made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew in order to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, so as to win those who are under the law. To the weak," sorry, my screen went off. "To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings." What does that verse tell you? What does that passage tell you? What did St. Paul try to do? He tried to spread the word, but how? He tried to spread the word how? In this case, but what did he try? What was his thought process in general? To the Jews, I became like a Jew that I might win the Jews. To those who were slaves, I became like slaves that I might win the slaves.
To different audiences, there's different way to address them.
Excellent. To different audiences, to different audiences, okay? To different audiences, there's different ways to win them, right? So you can win people who are under the law by being like what? Like those under the law. To the Jews, he became like what? And it doesn't mean that he forgot Jesus Christ. That's not what it means. But he said, if you are a Jew and you became Christian, I will teach you how to go from a Jew to becoming Christian. If you are under the law, which means you're a slave, I will teach you how to go from being a slave to being a what? A Christian. So when he got to the Romans, what did he do? He said, you guys are very smart. You're very intelligent. If I write you an epistle, if I write you a letter that's very basic and simple, what are they going to do with it? They're going to tell you you're a fool. You don't know what you're talking about. We're too smart for you. They're going to tear it up and say, nice try. We're done with this Christianity thing. So what did he do with the Epistle of the Romans? He not complex, but he made it very deep, very rich in meaning. That way, if you're a Roman and you appreciate art and wine and all that fine stuff, right? And you get this epistle and it's written very intelligently, what are you going to think? This dude's pretty smart, right? He's onto something here. Maybe I should learn something. Maybe I should learn something from what he's telling me. So that verse that St. Paul wrote in a different epistle is so true when it comes to the book of the Romans. Because this man, St. Paul, was able to write an epistle to like the analogous version of a first grader and wrote a different epistle to like a college student. That's what's the amazing thing about the Pauline Epistles. He could take a message as simple as Jesus Christ died on the cross for you. He could explain it to a first grader, and he could explain it to a college student. That's the broadness of his epistles. So the 13 to 14 epistles, all of them have their different messages. But it's when you get to the Romans, 14th was the Hebrews, some count, some don't. It's a long story. All right? But he was so talented that he was able to write an epistle from like this level all the way to this level. And that's what you see especially in the book of Romans. Exactly. Now, Ephesians. Does anybody know where Ephesus was? Ephesus. Asia Minor, by where Turkey was, okay? And what he did here is he talked about salvation by grace through faith. And basically, he talked about God's eternal plan. And what's unique about the epistle to the Ephesians, there's no heresy. There was nothing that he's trying to combat, right? There's nothing that he's trying to combat. And actually, the epistle that we read in the wedding is coming from Ephesians, talking about wives, submit to your husbands, just as Christ died for the church, right? Just as Christ died for the church. Wives submit to your husbands, and then he tells men, submit, or basically love your wives as much as Christ loved the church. And so what he basically did here was this was more of a general one, where he gave them like a statement of God's blessings, and then he talked about God's goals, and he basically said that everybody who's strong has victory over the evil. So this is kind of like the general epistle. Okay? The general epistle by St. Paul. Now, Colossians, or I don't even know how to pronounce it, like Colossae or something like that. It's in the same area. It's like a different part of Asia Minor. And that's why, remember, we're going in the order, like chronologically, of when he wrote it. So he went from one to the other. And what he did here was, there was a heresy that was spreading around that was going against Christ. And what he did was, he basically told them that, Christ is first and foremost. Christ is number one. And he was like disputing this heresy that was going around. And he was talking about the false teachers, and he was exposing their view. He was taking a view, and he's proving in chapter 2 how each one was wrong. And he was reaffirming something called the adequacy. So when you talk about adequacy, it's actually kind of a neutral word. It means just enough. But in this case, what he basically is saying is Christ is all you need. Because the false teachers are going around saying, Christ is... He went around saying Christ is all that you need. He's all you need. And that was the point of this epistle. Okay? Where people were going around spreading heresies, they say, no, all you need is Christ. Philippians, or Philippi. It's actually somewhere near Greece. It's a Roman colony, which means it's owned by the Romans. All right? And what he was doing was, Philippi was actually a place.
Is it Philippi or Philippi or something?
Philippi, it's fine. Philippi was a place where retired military people from Rome went to go live. Okay? So when you're in the army for a little bit in Rome, you're retired, it's like people moving to Florida, right? You know, you work up here, you work wherever, and you go retire in Florida. Kind of like that. Okay? So this is the Epistle to Florida. And what he did was, he told them, while he was in Rome, he was in prison a lot. People in Rome, remember how I told you he wrote this nice letter? Not everybody really liked John, right? So they threw him in prison a lot. And what he did was, he ended up thanking them about how they treated him. And what he did was, it was interesting. This is one of the only epistles that has no Old Testament quotes. And the reason for that is, it's written predominantly to Romans. So in Rome, you had Jewish slaves, so there were Jewish people there. So he included stuff in there. But in here, it was all retired Roman citizens.
So reading this would just be just for history kind of a thing?
It would be not reading just for history, but rather understanding,
The history.
like, it talks about Christian living. So what he's trying to teach these Roman people is how to live their lives as Christians. Because remember, they knew nothing else, right? Roman people, they didn't know anything else. So he's trying to teach them true Christian living. So you see here, he kind of writes this like thank you letter, like thank you for how you're treating me. And then he ends with, going along with the Christian life. So those are the 9 epistles written to the churches. Okay, and I know I went through them quickly, but I didn't want to like get bogged down. But there's 4 that we said that are written to who? There were 9 churches and 4 began with a P. Say it louder. Pastoral, all right, are written to people. The first one is Philemon. Okay, Philemon. It's not Philemon, it's Philemon. Yeah, who was Philemon? Does anybody know who Philemon was? He was not a prophet. How do you say it? Say it different?
What?
Thank you, close. Philemon. That's how I say it.
What was he?
Who was he? He was not a thief. You're close. Who was he? You're on the right track. I think you know where you're going. Who was Philemon?
Not a very good person.
Incorrect. He was a member of the church at Colossae, which is where the Colossians were. Did you read this one? It's one chapter. It's one chapter. One sinking chapter, guys. Has anybody read Philemon? Yes. What is it about? What is it about? Come on, baby. I was like excited. What was it about? Very close. There is a man. There are 2 characters. Listen. There are 2 characters in the book of Philemon. Philemon is one, and you have a second guy. There are no prophets. His slave. His slave, whose name is Onesimus. Onesimus. Good. Onesimus is a runaway slave. So here's what Onesimus did. Onesimus stole from his master and peaced out. Okay? He stole from his master and bounced. He was gone. And by Roman law, that is punishable by death. Like, you don't even stand a chance. It's over for you. And Onesimus, he actually felt bad to the point where he wanted to go back. So look at this crazy guy. He stole from someone, and now he knows he's going to die, but he wants to go back. And so St. Paul, he obviously knows Philemon because he's a member of his church. And he encourages Philemon to forgive Onesimus. So, guess what the message of this epistle is? Oh, very good. Somebody's paying attention. Forgiveness, okay? So the concept being forgiveness. And he preaches this message of forgiveness. Again, I will say this a million times. The epistles, it's an ongoing message. It's a message you can relate to. Have any of you struggled with forgiveness? Then the rest of you are lying, okay? If you have, thank you, okay? If you have in any sense struggled with forgiveness, it is one chapter. Go read it. It's a wonderful message where he starts off like very warm-hearted and loving towards Philemon and Onesimus, and he basically he persuades him why he should forgive the man who by every means in the law should be killed. Everybody says Onesimus should be killed, and he convinces him to allow him to survive. The next one, Timothy. Who's yes?
Sorry, can I just say one more thing about this?
Yeah, sure.
So the other thing that I personally learned from it is the way that he wrote or
Yeah.
talked to him.
Exactly.
How to be very good in asking somebody to do something and kind of win him over just by the way that you talk. So it teaches a lot in the way that we should approach people and talk to them.
Absolutely.
Finally, he sent that letter with Odysseus to go back to fight. So it's very cool that the same guy that was supposed to go back to die, he's the one who's carrying the letter, saying, "Listen, forgive me for what I've done."
Absolutely.
So it's very cool.
Yeah, it's very, very
Thank
good.
you.
No, thank you. So the next two, and then there's one more, and that's it. But the two epistles to Timothy, there's two of them. Do you know who Timothy was? He was a younger disciple of St. Paul's. And what he does is, eventually, St. Timothy took over the care and became the bishop of the Ephesus area. And so he wrote this epistle to Timothy about how to take care of the church. And so during his fourth mission trip, he realized he was probably not going to come back, St. Paul. And so he wrote this to combat some of the problems the church was facing and to encourage them. And so basically the message you hear is almost like a father talking to a son. It's like this very loving message in both Timothys about him encouraging him, remain steadfast in the faith, encourage, lead them, bring them to Christ. It's almost like a father talking to his son. And he explains to them how to do this, okay, by giving them the different responsibilities within the church. Okay? So the way they worship, who is the right leader. Actually, some of the biblical things that it's cool. There's a table that shows you the qualifications of all the different leaders. Okay? So it's very structured in giving directions to Timothy. And then 2 Timothy goes on to the same thing. It's the following one, but I'll skip it and I'll come back to it. I'll go to Titus first. Titus was one of his disciples in Crete, and there was Anyway, there was a heresy that was ongoing at that time in this area, and what he was doing is he kept going back to this concept of love, right? He kept going back to this concept of love and teaching and love and teaching, and this is how he was teaching them to combat the heresy at that time. And then the last one is 2 Timothy. Okay, so he knew that he wasn't going to survive it much longer, St. Paul, and so what he did was he was teaching St. Timothy to carry on the ministry, right? So it's almost like he was passing along the torch. He was saying, okay, I know that no longer will this be me, but now it will be you, okay? And so he takes this one, he passes it, and he teaches Timothy to do a couple of things. To guard the gospel, preserve, continue preaching in it, and the last thing is suffering. Okay, good. And then the last thing he teaches them, guys, is how to suffer in the gospel. What does it mean to suffer in the gospel? Be persistent. What else? How do you be a servant to it?